6 gold galleons? Why don't you go grab it? The complaint that got into his ear made Harry stunned and hesitated for a moment, but he continued his previous actions and pushed open the door of this Ollivander wand shop. Ding ding ding, the door was enchanted, or some device made a noise, but it didn't matter. The important thing was that the wand shop suddenly became quiet. Harry was a little nervous. He subconsciously turned his head and looked behind, but he didn't see anything. He then remembered that Hagrid just dropped him off at the door of the shop and left to buy Harry a birthday present. The wand shop was not big, or because the room was crowded with shelves, the originally spacious room had to become smaller. As a result, Harry could easily see what was in the room, such as the pile of empty boxes in the corner, the beautiful feathers on the table that he had never seen before, the neatly arranged wood, and the fact that he was looking at the two of him. An old man with messy hair and rare silver eyes that looks like 2 moons in a dim room. He must be the owner of this wand shop. The other, a boy, looks about the same size as Harry, with blonde hair like winter straw, a little messy, but it looks like it should feel good. Harry didn't know what to say hello or to nod. If you want to speak, what should you say? Good morning? No, it's already afternoon. Listen, I only have 5 galleons and 2 silver seco. Thankfully, Harry breathed a sigh of relief, because after the boy spoke, their attention was diverted back to continue their unfinished argument. Clap! The boy took out a handful of coins from his pocket and slapped it heavily on the table. He might have used a little more force, and a slender vase shook and almost fell. 5 golden galleons, 2 silver secos, a total of 7 coins. This is all my money. The boy emphasized on the word all, holding a slender wand in his hand, and on the table next to it was an empty box that looked very historical, and the velvet inside seemed to be older than the box. The old man blinked. His expression looked serious, even a little stern, but Harry seemed to see a little hidden smile, and he didn't know if it was an illusion. After all, his glasses were already worn out, which might affect his vision. Hey, little guy, lying is not what a good boy should do. The old man lowered his head a little, and his eyes fell on the boy's other hand, where a golden galleon was lying quietly in the boy's hand. Look, you still have a galleon, don't you? There are 5 galleons and 2 silver secos on the table, and the boy has 1 galleon in his hand, which adds up to enough to buy a wand and to have a balance along the way. No. This is my lucky coin. Staring at the old man vigilantly, the boy clenched the gold galleon in his hand and said angrily, besides, this is just an old wand, how could it be worth 6 gold galleons? Harry adjusted his glasses, trying hard to see the wand. However, in his opinion, this wand seems to be no different from other wands. The jet black and shiny wand body has no flaws at all, just like black jade, soft and gentle. Is this an old wand? The old man repeated, then he shook his head and said seriously and sincerely to the boy holding the wand, then, can you tell me why you want this old wand? A wand? As a professional, I can tell you this wand isn't for you. I just love this wand. Okay, little guy, I'm very happy if you can say that, and this wand must be very happy too. The old man smiled and stretched out his hand to get the wand back, but the boy took a cautious step back and avoided it. However, this wand is a bit special. It already has an owner. Where is its owner? The old man scratched his head, and after thinking for a long time, he said with some distress, sorry, I can't remember who he is, but he does have a master. Where is its owner? The boy kept asking, and without waiting for the old man to answer, he continued, a man can have many wands, but a wand can only have one owner. That man abandoned his wand and let it lie alone. Here, he is not a qualified master, is he? The smile on the old man's face disappeared. He looked at the boy in front of him in surprise, and he had already admitted that the boy's words were correct. It's just that, out of professional ethics, he can't sell the wand to this boy yet. It's not a question of price, and money can't solve it. This wand is not for sale. Not for sale. Well, not for sale, I won't sell this wand. The old man nodded and stretched out his hand again, and this time, he never failed again. He lightly grabbed the wand and pulled it back from the boy's hand. Sorry, I made a joke with you just now. Carefully putting the wand back in its original box, the old man smiled apologetically at the boy. That's it, I'll choose another wand for you at half the price. How? No need. The boy declined the old man's offer without hesitation, grabbed the money on the table, turned his head and said to Harry, "Are you here to buy a wand too?" Harry nodded. He wanted to say something else, but the boy quickly turned his head and said to the old man, "Are you sure you won't sell it? Actually, this wand. Ash wood, phoenix feathers, 11 inches long, good elasticity." The boy yawned and said to the somewhat surprised old man, "I know all your worries. So. Then, of course, I would wisely choose to give up." The boy smiled slightly and waved to Harry, "Come here, you don't need to stand so far, we are not bad people." Harry walked over and stated his purpose. The boy walked past him, probably because the road was too narrow, and he bumped into Harry. Possibly because he didn't control his balance, the boy's body tilted a little, and he supported the table before falling down, avoiding the tragedy of kissing the floor. "I'm sorry, are you okay?" Harry quickly apologized and helped the boy up. "It doesn't matter, I was careless myself." The boy smiled and patted the dust on his body. "This wand shop should really be cleaned." He shrugged and said to Harry, "Looks like I've had a bit of bad luck today, maybe I should go back and rest. Goodbye, Harry Potter." Goodbye." Harry waved his hand mechanically, and when the boy walked out of the wand shop, he remembered one thing. What did he just say? "Goodbye, Harry Potter." Harry touched his face. Does he have his name carved on his face? "Good afternoon, Mr. Potter." The old man greeted Harry very politely. Harry regained his senses, said hello to the old man, and at the same time raised his own questions. "Well, Mr. Potter, do you know the scar on your forehead? The one with this scar is about your age, and you are the only one." The old man began to pack up the wand boxes on the table, and when he picked up one of the boxes, he paused with a weird smile on his face. What a persistent child! The old man slowly opened the box, and Harry found that it was the box that contained the wand the boy wanted. Contacting the old man's reaction, he had a guess the boy stole the wand. "I was a little disappointed." Harry was really disappointed. "I really didn't expect that the boy who was about his age and looked very pleasing to the eye would actually be a thief. But how do wizards catch thieves? Do they have something like a police station? Funny little guy." The old man smiled. He took out the contents of the box and put them on the table. "There are 7 coins in total, 5 gold galleons and 2 silver sequos. These 7 coins were supposed to be in the boy's pocket, but now they appear here, and the wand must be in the boy's pocket. How did he do that?" Harry tried hard to recall, but in the end he could only come to an uncertain conclusion, that the boy stole the wand by unknown means at the moment he collided with him. Although he paid, but that kind of behavior is still a thief, right? Aren't you going to pursue it? Seeing the old man put away the empty box and still have money, Harry didn't seem to care much about it, and asked curiously. "He paid." The old man smiled. "And, he will come back soon and give me the wand back." "Why?" "The ash wand is loyal to its one and only true owner, and cannot be inherited or gifted from its original owner, and if so, it will lose its power and skill. If the core of the wand is unicorn hair, this tendency is even more pronounced because the only audience was the famous Harry Potter." The old man was very relieved to tell him a lot of unique secret recipes. "Let's put it this way, the ashwood wand only belongs to its first owner. For subsequent users, this wand may not be so obedient." Harry suddenly realized, and then he felt a little sympathetic to the boy. After spending so much effort, what he got was a wand that was out of hand. But, he seems to know the problem. About this issue. The old man picked up a wand and played with it. The core of that wand is a phoenix feather, which is changeable and difficult to control, and is extremely picky about the user, but once it gets its loyalty, it will be the most great wand. In the wand shop, what the old shopkeeper said to Harry, Asker didn't know, and he wasn't interested in knowing. Compared to this, another matter seems to be more urgent, such as the problem of eating. Touching his pocket, it was empty. He had indeed left all the money in the wand shop, in exchange for a wand that might not be very useful. Lose or gain? Asker shrugged his shoulders and got into the crowd. His thin body was quickly submerged. Whether it's right or wrong, once you've done it, don't regret it, right? Seeking support for a new book, whether it is a recommendation or a collection, a click is very important for Guizi, because it shows that Guizi is not a person, that Guizi is not talking to himself, that he is talking to himself, that what Guizi has done is achieved your approval. There are 2 shifts today, and the next shift is at night. It was noon, and the sun was high. Although Asker can pat his chest and say that he absolutely does not regret spending all the money in exchange for the wand, he still has to be responsible for the consequences of this incident, such as how to solve the problem of lunch and accommodation. These problems can all be solved with money. How do you say that? Problems that can be solved with money are not problems, as long as you have money. Asker has no money, but some people have money, and those people's money, in Asker's view, is his money. Your money is my money, and my money is still my money. Just like withdrawing money from Gringotts, Asker has to withdraw his own money from others. There are many methods. Asker chose the more troublesome method. As for the reason, who made me a good person with a noble character, pure and kind, with a righteous body, a good person who takes pleasure in helping others? Asked was moved by himself. He walked quickly in one direction, and finally stopped in front of a middle-aged man, bowed politely, and said, "Good afternoon, sir, it seems that you need some help." "Oh, indeed, I need some help." The middle-aged man nodded helplessly, waved the map in his hand, and said, "Do you know where the bookstore is?" "I bought a map of London on purpose, but the coordinate streets above are completely different from here." The middle-aged man started talking ramble, probably because he had not had an audience for too long, and he had a lot of words. Asker listened patiently, without any impatience. He knew very well that patience is a necessary psychological quality for success. Soon, Asker figured out the needs of middle-aged people. This Mr. Granger, he is a Muggle, and his daughter was admitted to Hogwarts because of her talent. Today, he brought his daughter to buy something, and then he logically got lost. "I'm going to complain to the one who sold the map." Mr. Granger was a little angry, and he handed the map to Asker. "Look, there's no street here at all." With just a glance, Asker knew where the problem was. If you can find the street layout of Diagon Alley on a Muggle-made map, that's a problem, isn't it? Resisting the smile, Ask took the map, crumpled it into a ball, and threw it into a trash can on the side of the road. "Mr. Granger, I think you need a guide now." Mr. Granger nodded, and Asker continued, "I know a little bit about this place. If you are willing to pay me a little commission, I think I can solve your troubles." "No problem. How much do you want?" "I can give it to you now." Mr. Granger's exhilaration was beyond Asker's expectations. It can be seen that the troubles and torments of getting lost may be more serious to Mr. Granger than Asker thought. Asker shook his head with a smile and motioned Mr. Granger to take back the wallet he had taken out. "We'd better wait until the end to discuss the remuneration. Let's see if what I've done can satisfy you. Aren't you afraid that I'll fail you?" Mr. Granger was a little curious. The boy in front of him looked only 11 or 12 years old, but he was about the same age as his daughter, but his calmness was far superior to his peers. "That's not a gentleman's behavior, is it?" Asker shrugged, and he still didn't say a word. "That is, besides, even if you default on your debt, I can still get my reward. For this kind of situation, Ask is very handy in handling it. After all, practice makes perfect. After the matter is settled, the rest will be much easier to handle." Although Asker has only been in the UK for half a month, he already knows Diagon Alley very well. He knows exactly where things are cheap and where things are of good quality. When Asker took Mr. Granger out of the Lycan bookstore, Mr. Granger was undoubtedly quite satisfied, and he also trusted Asker. Sometimes, the establishment of trust is so simple, and it is always easier to make people remember it by giving help than the icing on the cake. If Asker wants to do bad things, he has a lot of options next, but as he thought at the beginning, he plans to get the money in a more troublesome way today, which is a kind of fun for him. "Ask, are you a wizard?" Since the wand and clothes to be bought at the end need to be present in person, Ask and the others need to find Mr. Granger's daughter first. On the way, Mr. Granger couldn't control his curiosity and asked Asker, who had become familiar with him. "Strictly speaking, I'm just a quasi-wizard. When I finish my studies and pass the exam, then I can be considered a qualified wizard." Asker replied. "Oh, you know, I'm just an ordinary person, and my lover is also an ordinary person, but our daughter is a wizard." Mr. Granger scratched his head and smiled a little embarrassedly. "The wizard and magic, which is unfamiliar to us. Perhaps, in the eyes of your wizards, are we ordinary people very ignorant and foolish? Those who have this kind of thinking are the real ignorant and ignorant." Ask seemed to have thought of something, and his mood was a little depressed. "I have seen the most noble muggle, and I have seen the most despicable wizard. If it wasn't for them, forget it, it's all over." Ask, how old are you this year?" 11, what's wrong? Why do I feel that you are older than me? You know what, you looked so good just now." Mr. Granger racked his brains, but couldn't find a suitable word to describe it. Yu reading www.yuyugonshu.com sweating profusely. The vicissitudes. That's right. It's the vicissitudes of life. Rolling his eyes, Ask changed the book he was holding in one hand to the other, moved his wrist, and said angrily, "You think too much. It's such a hot day, wait a moment and remember to ask I eat ice cream." "No problem." Mr. Granger laughed and patted Asker on the shoulder, which made him grin. There was no way. Mr. Granger's attack was not serious, and Asker's shoulder was still injured. "I don't know how long they've walked," but in his impression, Asker felt that they had already visited the entire Diagon Alley. The time is approaching the start of school, and many parents take their children out to buy things. It is bustling and very lively, which is rarely seen in normal times. Asker and Mr. Granger, these two people, one big and one young, one old and one young, walk together in harmony, like an ordinary family. Squinting, Ask stared at the road, not knowing what he was thinking. Perhaps at this moment, he can taste a little bit of affection and warmth, the taste of his home that has never belonged to him. If possible, Asker hopes that this road will never end, and that time can stop for a while, even for a moment. Asker is homesick. From Norway in the north to strange Germany, from the gloomy minaret to the warm magic school, it seems that there is never a place to call home. Very sad, isn't it? What's more tragic than homelessness is homelessness. Ask for recommendation, ask for collection, ask for click. It is very hard to code words on the melon seed claw machine. I will see if the computer can arrive in a few days, maybe it will break out once. Mr. Granger didn't notice Asker's abnormality, and he was still pouring out the words he might have held back for many years to his only audience as before. Poor man. In Mr. Granger's words, aside from the nonsense, there is still some useful information, such as the one person he mentioned the most, Hermione Granger. There is no doubt that this should be Mr. Granger's pride, intelligence, and cuteness. No amount of praise is right for her, and it is no exaggeration. Asker understood the psychology of being a father, so he reduced Mr. Granger's description by 7/10, and came to a conclusion that he thought was more reliable. Smart, but somewhat rigid, with low emotional intelligence and poor interpersonal relationships. Because he is excellent, he naturally has a sense of pride, and he has a domineering feeling when speaking and doing things, and habitually puts himself at the center and commanding heights. A lady with a sense of superiority? By the way, she may not look very good, because Mr. Granger has used countless modifiers, but the two words beautiful and beautiful are not used. Ask's hair is drooping down, and he has no energy at all. The experience of dealing with this kind of person is really unforgettable, although the eldest lady who dealt with the last time is very beautiful and said, "We have arrived." According to Mr. Granger's description, Asker found the dessert shop he mentioned, not far from the entrance of Diagon Alley. Pushing the door open, Ask couldn't help shivering. The temperature inside the dessert shop was very low, and compared to the outside, it was two worlds. The wisps of cold air overflowed beyond Asker, collided with the surging heat outside, and turned into a hazy mist. "Really cold?" Asker murmured in a low voice. Even though he had been in the world of ice and snow for 10 years in the past 11 years, he still couldn't tolerate the slightest bit of cold. It was as if it was midsummer now, but he was still wearing long sleeves and a coat. After a pause at the door, Ask gritted his teeth, but bravely walked in. There are several small round tables in the cold drink shop, some are already occupied, and some are still empty. Asker swept around and found his target in the corner. "Ah!" Asker couldn't help sneezing and rubbed his nose with his hand. He had already decided to leave here as soon as possible. "Have a cold? I have medicine here." "Forget it, I'm not used to staying here, I'll leave in a while. I think it's cool here, it's like turning on the air conditioner, but I haven't found out where the air conditioner is installed. Is this all magic?" Mr. Granger took the book in Asker's hand, passed him, and walked towards the table in the corner. "Hey, my daughter, I'm back." Mr. Granger put what was in his hand on the ground, sat down, and then turned to ask Asker to come and sit down too. "Who is he?" The girl sitting in Mr. Granger put down the book in her hand and asked Mr. Granger. She looked at Asker without blinking, her eyes full of curiosity. "He is." Mr. Granger suddenly found that he didn't know Asker's name, smiled awkwardly, and turned to look at Asker. "Ask." Asker said his name, and looked at the brown-haired girl across from him without blinking, with nothing but indifference in his eyes. Once having seen the best, the rest is not worthwhile looking. If the one who taught Ask a tragic lesson was the white swan, then the one in front of him is just a hamster. No way, who made her front teeth so striking and impressed Asker deeply, no less than that person's seductive appearance. "Are you Norwegian?" Ask is a city in Norway, right next to Oslo. "We plan to travel there this year, but..." Hamster said to herself, from this point of view, she really deserves to be Mr. Granger's daughter. If there is a father, there must be a daughter. "I am German." Asker said lightly. The words of Hamster stopped abruptly. After a pause, she continued, "Germany? That's too far. Germans also want to come to England to study. You haven't introduced yourself yet." "My name is Hermione, Hermione Granger." "Well, I already knew that Mr. Granger had already told me your name." "You." Needless to say, Asker also knew that Miss Hermione must be looking very good now, and he also knew that he must have left a bad impression on her. However, so what? Although Asker told Mr. Granger that he wanted to eat ice cream, when he got here, he only ordered a glass of water, a glass of hot water. He drank the hot water into his stomach, it was warm, it dispelled the chill, and finally made Asker feel a little more comfortable. However, if he could get out of here and find a comfortable place to sleep, maybe Ask would be more comfortable. Mr. Granger, do you have any coins on you? Mr. Granger felt in his pocket and finally pulled out a handful of coins. Then, as a reward, these are mine, right? No problem, of course no problem, just. Naturally, Mr. Granger wouldn't care about such a handful of coins. It didn't add up to much anyway, but he felt a little embarrassed. After all, Asker helped him a lot, and he liked Asker quite a bit. After thinking for a while, he took out another note and placed it on top of the pile of coins. Thank you for your generosity. Asker wiped it casually, and the coins and banknotes were all in his pocket. Now that the money is in hand, it's time to say goodbye. The location of the wand shop and the dress shop, I have told you, I still have some things to deal with, goodbye. Goodbye. Mr. Granger waved his hand subconsciously, and when he came back to his senses, Asker had already left. I should invite him to dinner. He has helped me a lot. Mr. Granger was a little remorseful, and his daughter, Hermione, was biting a piece of ice, her front teeth gleaming coldly. Rude guy, he hasn't answered my question yet. Asker has an extraordinary sensitivity to money. When a handful of coins are dropped on the ground, he can hear the number of coins and their denominations from his voice. He knew how to make his money more and more, and he knew how to turn a handful of muggle coins into gold galleons, silver six, and copper gnats. The day before yesterday, Asker heard that there was a wizard who was collecting muggle coins at high prices for unknown purposes. Asker went there once, but he found that there was no wizard to trade, so the wizard kept increasing his salary. Asker had a handful of coins, and he also exchanged the paper money for coins, because the wizard only collected coins. The transaction went very smoothly, and the coins that were worthless for 1 galleon eventually turned into 10 galleons, which made Asker very happy. That's enough, I'll leave here tomorrow. When Asker asked him if he would continue to acquire coins, he was a little disappointed by the answer. The mysterious wizard watched Asker go away, then closed the door, and said angrily to the guest who suddenly appeared in the room, "Hey, can I be free now? It's all right for now. The school will start soon, and you can continue your trip." It couldn't be better. There is only one update today. I will sign the contract the day after tomorrow, and then I will take it to an university to do activities. The schedule is full, very fulfilling. Why do I feel like crying? 10 galleons, 170 in West, and 4,930 in Nat, which can crush a person to death. The exchange rate of wizard currency and muggle currency is generally 1 galleon is equivalent to 5 pounds, which is the official rate of Gringotts. Gringotts, in a sense, is the wizard's bank. They have the right to issue currency. It is not an exaggeration to say that they are the richest group of people in the wizarding world. For the collected muggle currency, they will use it to buy precious metals such as gold, and then turn them into gold galleons, silver sykes, and copper gnat, earning the difference and making amazing profits. This is a monopoly, and monopoly often means amazing wealth. The total assets are only 10 galleons. Asker doesn't think he needs to go to Gringotts to save money. Those goblins are always so mean. The greed and worship of money makes Asker almost vomit. As for withdrawing money, it's even more unnecessary. Asker has no rich parents, no rich inheritance, and the only wealth he inherited is the gin galleon that he regards as a lucky coin. The Leaky Cauldron is a good place, and old Tom is also a good man. Asker lived there until school started, and the price he paid was only 1 galleon and 6 seco. Boom boom boom, the alarm clock set by Asker rang. He turned off the alarm clock, and looked out the window with sleepy eyes. Although it is no longer the period of the Industrial Revolution, and London's factories have moved to other places, the status of London's fog capital has never changed. The grey fog is heavy and oppressive, and even sunlight is difficult to penetrate. They work hard and persistently to prevent the arrival of light. Asker once lived in a foggy place for 10 years. He liked everything there except the cold. There, although it was also foggy, the fog was white and thin, like a layer of veil covering the earth. When the sun rises, these mists will dissipate consciously, and if you are lucky, you may even see a rainbow. Asker doesn't like London, and he doesn't like England either. In the half of the world he travelled, his favourite was Norway, followed by France, and then gone. As a girls' school, Beauxbatons did not admit boys, which was once the most disappointing thing for Asker. He had no choice but to travel all the way to England, a country he didn't like very much. Today is the opening day of Hogwarts, and Usk and the other students need to go to King's Cross Station, find platform 9 3/4, and take the Hogwarts Express to school. Things have already been packed up. Magic is indeed a good thing. The small bag with the magic spell can hold a whole room, which saves Asker a lot of effort. Lying on the bed for a while, Asker got up from the bed after the fog finally couldn't resist the sunlight and began to be dissipated. After brushing his teeth, washing his face, and arranging his clothes and hair, Asker tidied up the room again, and finally left here. Ask, are you leaving? Old Tom got up early, and as usual, he huddled in the bar, wiping the wine glass with a cloth in his hand. Seeing Asker coming out, he knew that Asker was leaving. Well, school starts today. Time flies so fast, another year has passed in a blink of an eye. Ask, do you want a strawberry-flavored sandwich? I think it would be better if there was another butterbeer. I think you should drink more milk. You are still a child and growing. I've been drinking milk for almost a month. For the sake of leaving, can you give me a glass of butterbeer? Asker said helplessly, because he has lived in the ice and snow for a long time, he has long learned to drink to keep out the cold. He also likes to drink, because after drinking, his whole body is warm, his head will be a little heavy, toffee, but his thoughts are very clear, he likes this feeling. In the end, Asker took the sandwich and milk from Old Tom, pouted, sat down, and ate breakfast slowly. Old Tom looked at Asker with a smile, secretly proud of his another victory. Maybe he wouldn't be so happy if he could check out his cellar, though. It's you who apologized to me first. Ask had a bitter face, but in his heart he was extremely happy, even a little proud. Although Old Tom's wine cellar is hidden and the door locks are complicated, that can't stop Asker. After all, Asker's goal is to steal all of Gringotts' money, and his ambitions are lofty. As usual, after a while, Old Tom will go to the wine cellar to get wine, and it is time for Asker to leave. Goodbye, Ask, good luck. Well, I'll miss you, Wine, in a low voice. What did you say? I didn't say anything. Okay, it's getting late, I'm leaving. 5 minutes later, the first group of guests at the Leaky Cauldron today heard a heart-wrenching scream. Asker's pocket was empty again, replaced by a small jug of wine, which was Old Tom's treasure, and Asker took a third of it. Autumn has come, will winter be far behind? Asker felt that it was necessary to prepare for winter, a pot of wine was a must, and other things would be solved slowly when there was time. Now that it's almost September, the weather is not as hot as it was a month ago, because it rained only yesterday, and the air is much fresher than before. It's a good day to travel. When I arrived at King's Cross Station, it was still early. When Asker entered the platform, the Hogwarts Express seemed to have just arrived not long ago. Good luck, Asker thought to himself. He took out the lucky coin from his pocket, tossed it to the sky at random, caught it, and put it back into his pocket without looking at it. Asker is familiar with his lucky coin. He doesn't need to look at it. He also knows which side of the lucky coin is facing up. He can also control the strength and make any side face up. As usual, today's lucky coin is still positive, which means that Asker's luck is not bad today. Asker thinks so, but after an hour, he may not think so. Today may not be the worst day in Asker's life, but it has absolutely nothing to do with the word luck. The thick smoke of the steam locomotive shrouded the sky above the chattering crowd, and cats of various colors wore them under the people's feet. Amid the humming of the crowd and the noise of lugging heavy luggage, the owls also screeched, and you answered me. The first few carriages were already crowded with students. Some of them leaned out of the car windows to talk to their families, while others were scrambling in their seats. Hey, you reading www.yuyugonshu.com John, how was your summer vacation? It's alright, but my grades in school were a bit poor, and my dad beat me up hard. Okay, be happy, we're going back to Hogwarts soon, and then we'll be free. Hopefully, the thought of Snape's greasy hair makes me sick. Well, he gave me a fail last year. Who made you a Gryffindor? Closing the window, Ask nodded thoughtfully. It seemed that the Gryffindor students were targeted by a teacher named Snape. Asker has long heard that Hogwarts has 4 houses, of which the worst relationship is Gryffindor and Slytherin. This hatred has lasted for more than 1,000 years. Well, it's better to go to Slytherin, so as not to be targeted like those unlucky bastards. Asker made a decision. Rather than being targeted by that Snape in Gryffindor, it would be better to go to Slytherin and accept his protection. Seeking advantages and avoiding disadvantages, Ask is already very skilled. Dong dong, the door of the carriage was knocked, then pulled open, and a large box entered Asker's field of vision. May I ask here? The voice was a little familiar. Ask raised his head slowly, hey for a while, and then the expression on his face became strange. Why is it you again? Good morning, Miss Hamster. Well, there have been few updates recently, because I haven't code words recently. However, the Mid-Autumn Festival will be updated a little more, at least 10,000 words. There are more than 100 collections in one night, and a melon seed is enough to satisfy ////. The weather is nice today, and Hermione is in a bad mood. Who else would suddenly have a nickname that wasn't a compliment, and he would feel a little unhappy in his heart, not to mention that Hermione has always been very concerned about her 2 front teeth. Although Hermione really wanted to find a new compartment to avoid this hateful guy in front of her, the reality was that there were not many empty compartments. What's more, her obviously overweight box has been annoying to her during this period of time. Gritting her teeth, Hermione increased her strength and opened the door a little, ready to get the box in. Asker shrugged and thought for a moment. He took out a book from his pocket, leaned on the seat, and changed to a more comfortable position to start reading. Hermione was still fighting with the box, because there was a threshold that was neither too high nor too low at the door of the carriage, so the box could not be pulled in, so it had to be lifted first. However, Hermione had already dragged the box for a long time, and she was not strong enough to do this alone. In the first 10 seconds, Hermione was still trying to solve it by herself, but in the 11th second, she began to expect Asker to help. When Hermione needed help the most, Asker chose to sit and watch. Although he was looking at it with the book in his hands, as long as he was not blind, he would know that he didn't put his mind on the book at all, he was just watching the fun. Why do you say that? Because judging from the cover, Asker's book was taken down. Hermione wanted to lift the box and throw it in Asker's face, but if she could do that, it wouldn't happen now. Therefore, Hermione could only make up for the scene where she taught Asker a lesson, and Asker knelt at her feet and cried bitterly, with a look of regret. Hey, can you help me? Brain supplements can't be eaten as food, and Hermione still needs to face the reality. Trying to squeeze out a smile, Hermione said to Asker with a smile, the box is very heavy, I am alone. I'm not calling hello. Asker was half leaning there, with the book down in his hand blocking his face and letting go of his voice. Of course I know you're not called hi, your name is Ask, a German bastard. Hermione thought angrily, but she continued, Asker, do me a favor. Are you asking for help? I will endure. Hermione clenched her fists and gritted her teeth, wishing she could rush to kill Asker. Yo, What's your expression like? It's so scary, I'm almost crying because of you. Asker took the book down a little, revealing his eyes and half of his face. It can be seen that Ask has absolutely no tendency to be scared to cry, on the contrary, he is smiling happily. Why do you keep targeting me? Hermione said suddenly, the anger on her face had long since disappeared, and looked straight into Asker's eyes. She raised a question she had always asked. Hermione's father, Mr. Granger, has a high opinion of Asker, and he likes Asker very much. From him, Hermione also had some preliminary understanding. Ask should not be the kind of rude, vulgar, uneducated bastard. How is it possible? I'm that kind of person. Asker said without changing his face. Then he stood up, walked to the door, grabbed the handle of the box, and pulled the box into the carriage with a strong lift. Okay, I'm sorry. Well, I'm saying this very seriously. Sorry for what? Hermione asked. After dragging the box to the corner and putting it away, Ask turned around, returned to his seat, grabbed the book and lay down, and finally threw out a sentence. You just pretend that I didn't say anything. You. Hermione's little affection for Asker was finally gone. There were 2 rows of seats in the carriage, and Asker was halfling, which was considered to occupy 1 row, and the other row naturally belonged to Hermione. Sitting in her seat, Hermione just looked up and could see Asker, a face she might never forget for the rest of her life. In all fairness, Ask's appearance can only be regarded as average, and now he is fine. If he grows up, he should be at the level of passerby. No features, this is the feature of passersby. Maybe it was to let herself remember Asker's face, so as not to recognize the wrong person when looking for him to settle accounts in the future. Hermione worked hard to memorize every feature on his face, and even drew a sketch in a notebook. The gentleman wants to take revenge, and it will not be too late even after 10 years. Oriental Proverbs. Have you seen enough? No, it's still a little bit. Hermione added a few strokes to the sketch and said without looking up. Then she reacted, quickly closed the book, and asked Asker, who had been staring at her, as if nothing was wrong, have you seen enough? No, it's still a little bit. Exactly the same answer. If everything went on like this, Hermione and Ask would probably have to fight for a while, but the sudden knock on the door and the appearance of a little fat man put a stop to this story. May I sit here? Well, yes, there is still a seat there. Ask said lightly, pointing to the row of seats opposite Hermione. Oh, thank you, you are a good person. The little fat man lifted the box, which was much smaller and lighter than Hermione's. Putting the box away, the little fat man sat on the seat and twisted a few times nervously. Murderess. The little fat man suddenly thought of a sentence often said in the book, and turned his head cautiously. Facing the source of his murderous aura, he squeezed out a smile that was not much better than crying. You are also a good person. Hermione had nothing to say, being sent a card by such a fat man. Woo woo woo, the whistle of the train sounded, and it seemed that it was about to leave. With a heavy growl, the red Hogwarts moved quickly, then gradually accelerated, getting faster and faster, and drove out of the platform. Compared with the excitement, joy and excitement of other people, Ask is more cold, calm, cold, and indifferent. At the moment when the train started, his whole body became cold. After lying down for a while, Ask suddenly sat up, took out a stack of letter paper and a pen from his pocket, and started writing. It's almost the end of the month. As usual, it's time to write a letter to tell Grandpa about his current situation. This letter is very short, so I am not afraid of telling lies. The record is as follows: I'm very good. The above is the entire content of the letter. On the large letter paper, this short sentence is not even a line full. However, Asker took more than an hour to finish writing, because this is not just writing a letter, but also a review of his time. When he finished writing, Asker took out another envelope, stuffed the letter into it, and put it back into his pocket. When he reached into his pocket, Asker bumped into something, and after a slight pause, he grabbed the stick, rubbed it for a long time before releasing it, and pulled out his hand. Looking out of the window for a while, Asker felt a little irritable. He knew that the unforgettable memory was tormenting him again. I hope it will be a little warmer there. This is Asker's only expectation for the new school. May Merlin bless this child and fulfill his wish. It's all Guizi's fault, I overslept so, we will have 2 shifts tomorrow to apologize. The journey is a bit long, at least for these kids. Using fluo powder, it only takes an instant to reach Hogwarts, and a spoonful of fluo powder is only 2 siko, and there is no age limit. Compared to flying brooms, apparitions, and night buses, this should be the most ideal way to travel. However, with so many students using fluo powder to go to Hogwarts through the fireplace on the same day, it would be a nightmare. For the Hogwarts Express, it was subject to several magical restrictions before it was approved for school use by the Ministry of Magic. Many pure-blood families have been incensed by the idea, claiming that using Muggle transport for their children is unsafe, unhygienic, and demeaning to their children. However, when the Ministry of Magic ordered the students to either take the train or not go to school, the opposition was quickly silenced. So, is hypocritical, isn't it? During the journey, there was an episode, the little fat man who was in the same carriage as Asker, Neville Longbottom, his pet, a toad, escaped. Neville went to find his pet, Hermione went to help, Asker was lying there taking a nap, and Hermione didn't expect him to help. The Hogwarts Express is the same as always, and the headmaster of the distant castle, Whitebeard, is the same as always. As one of the 3 major schools of magic in Europe, Hogwarts has a history that can be traced back to 1,000 years ago. There are countless celebrities. Merlin, who is talked about all day long, is a student of Slytherin. If compared with Muggle schools, Hogwarts should be equivalent to a prestigious school like Eton College. Albus Dumbledore, the headmaster of Hogwarts, the greatest wizard of the 20th century. There are too many stories about him, so I won't leave them here. Today is the start of school. Dumbledore got up an hour earlier than usual. After cleaning, he sat in front of the desk and started to make a final confirmation on the freshman roster. Habitually, Dumbledore flipped the page, and a photo of a boy jumped out of the page. Black hair, tousled, very much like his father, with emerald eyes. Every time Dumbledore sees these eyes, Dumbledore can't help but think of the mother who may have changed the course of history, an amazing mother's mother. "Good morning, Harry," Dumbledore said softly. This is something he has often done recently. Greeting a photo is a bit funny, isn't it? Maybe it's a little irresponsible to say that. The reason Dumbledore opened this rookie roster was just to take a look at Harry Potter, that's all. Sometimes, living too long is not a good thing. The accumulation of too many memories forces you to forget some less important ones, and only save the most important ones. Even the greatest wizard, even if he is Dumbledore, is the same. After all these years, if there is anything that Dumbledore will never forget until he dies, maybe there are only a few names, 2 women's and 3 men's. Fawkes flew in, landed on the table, tilted his head and looked at the roster of freshmen on the table. It turned the pages of the book with its beak at a high speed, until it stopped at a certain page, and turned its head to look at its master. In the photo of the book page, Asker stared at Dumbledore impatiently, as if he was very unhappy about being disturbed. The smile on Dumbledore's face slowly disappeared, and he stared at this face with a complicated expression. After a long time, he turned his head and said to Fawkes, "Who is he?" Fawkes flapped his wings and swiped his claws over the name at the bottom of the page, where Asker's name was. "Ask." "No, he's not Ask." Dumbledore shook his head quickly. Fawkes blinked, turned his head, and looked out the window. After all, it is his own bird, it always feels weird. Dumbledore noticed Fawkes's abnormality, and after a little thought, he probably knew what Fox meant. You should keep an eye on him, Fox, is that what you mean? Fox patted his wings noncommittally, jumped to the side of the bird's nest, lay there and started to sleep soundly. Dumbledore sighed helplessly. Although he is the master of Fox, this does not mean that he has absolute control over Fox. There are some things that Fox does not say, and Dumbledore can't do anything about it. But, pay more attention to this boy. Don't you know Fox? I started following him very early. Taking off his glasses and wiping them, Dumbledore suddenly felt that he needed to use the pensieve again, and he felt that his memory was a little fuzzy. It was still a long time before freshmen entered. Dumbledore grabbed his wand and walked to the pensieve in the corner. Asker had a nightmare, or he continued the previous nightmare. The endless ice and snow, nothing but white, this is Asker's dream world. Here, time and direction seem to be completely absent, and the only thing that seems to exist is the eternal cold. As a person who lives in winter all the year round, Asker's resistance to cold is not as good as the average person, which is an unusual thing in itself. Of course, if you contact this dream that Asker often has, everything seems to be normal again. If in reality, what Asker needs to face is the coldness of his body and he will be fine with a few more clothes, then in this nightmare that he does not know when it will end, what awaits him is the coldness of his soul. That coldness has been carved into Asker's bones. In the real world, all it takes is a little chill and he feels like he's fallen back into that nightmare. Every once in a while, this nightmare will break out, and you reading www.yuyugonshu.com will never give up unless Asker is tossing half to death. This is a disease that St. Mungo's Hospital can't cure, and it may accompany him throughout his life until he is brought into the grave. Ask, who woke up from a nightmare, was sweating profusely, but he was shivering from the cold. He grabbed the jug in his hand and poured it into his mouth without hesitation. He was in such a hurry that he spilled more wine on his clothes than he drank. Spicy liquor and extremely high-purity alcohol can be used directly as fuel. God knows where old Tom got such strong vodka, isn't he afraid of burning his head? After taking a few sips, Asker was burned with tears, and he was in a state of embarrassment. His throat was on fire, and his face was as red as if he could drip blood. Asker still underestimated the strength of this wine, so he needs to pay a little price for it. However, Merlin's blessing, Asker's body has warmed up again, which should be regarded as good news. This damn! Asker supported his head with his hands. The vodka's alcoholic strength was not justified. He already had a tendency to float, his head was dizzy, and his limbs were out of control, which was the so-called drunkenness. If Asker knew that this pot of vodka once brought down a dragon, maybe he would be more comfortable. I'm so sleepy. I'll sleep for a while. Asker yawned, his hands softened, his head tilted, and he fell asleep on the table. At about the same time, the door of the carriage was pushed open, and Hermione and Neville returned. The Hogwarts Express stopped, which means that the short and long journey is over, and another more exciting life is about to begin. Wizards enter the magic school at the age of 11. After 7 years of study, they graduate only after passing the assessment. During those 7 years, they spent far more time at school than at home, spending more time with their classmates than with their family. For them, the most important 7 years of their lives are the magical school years. Taking Christmas as the boundary, an academic year is divided into 2 semesters. God knows why wizards who have always looked down on muggles also celebrate Christmas. The students left the train bustlingly, wearing the robes they had prepared for a long time, and headed towards Hogwarts Castle under the leadership of Rubeus Hagrid, who was taller and burlier than the tall and burly one. Harry was walking in the middle of the line with his new friend Ron, and although he wanted to go to the front to chat with Hagrid, Harry felt that it would affect Hagrid's work. The night was like ink, walking on the rough road, stumbling and bumpy, it seemed to indicate that the road of life was equally difficult. Walking further and further away, the voices in the team gradually disappeared, only the gasping and the sound of the solace rubbing against the ground remained. People, have a heart of awe. These young freshmen are already in awe of the mysterious Hogwarts, which is a good start. Thousands of years ago, at the beginning of Hogwarts, 4 great wizards set a school rule: freshmen must cross the lake. This is an odd school rule, but it was still adhered to by successive principals. The principal was also a student. They clearly remember that when they went through all kinds of hardships, well, this is an exaggeration. In short, after passing through this rough road, going around the corner, a black lake suddenly opened up at the end of the narrow road. On the high hillside on the other side of the lake stood a towering castle with many spires and fans. The windows twinkle under the stars. This is Hogwarts. Shocked. Even if I have heard of Hogwarts from my parents and elders, even if Hogwarts, a school history has already described the school very clearly, even if I have seen it countless times in photos. Shocked. This is Hogwarts. Taking a deep breath, Asker sorted out his emotions, returned to his original sloppy attitude, and continued in a pretentious tone, "It's not bad, it's a little better than I thought. Only one point. The only thing that's better here than there is that it's not that cold here," Asker said without turning his head, and rubbed his face. Fortunately, it was not as painful as it was at the beginning. Asker's face on the right was obviously hit a little more than the left. If it wasn't too dark, the red slap print would have been clearly visible. Hermione pouted and walked forward across Asker. "Fake guy. And villains, bastards. You, what are you doing? Take off your clothes. You. I'm going out. Hey, I'm a very fair person. Since I saw yours, I took advantage of you. All right, I'll let you see it back. Abnormal. Tisk tisk, a long-lost name." The above is the little episode that happened on the Hogwarts Express. The specific details, well, the slap print on Asker's face is everything. What is there to say? We have grown up, but we can no longer find our way back. The weather is ever-changing, but it is people's hearts that change more than the weather. The first second was sunny, and the next moment may be rainy. It is far more difficult to figure out people's hearts than to predict the weather, isn't it? Asker's heart was covered with dark clouds, the winter wind was blowing tightly, and the white cold air crossed the boundless wilderness, taking away warmth and leaving only sadness. "Well, I'm wrong, it's not sadness, but coldness." Asker tightened his robes. "There is no wind tonight, the midsummer has not yet come, the sky is clear and the moon is full of flowers, but he is still a little cold. This is a disease that cannot be cured. Don't get in the way." Asker was pushed hard, almost fell, and staggered forward a few steps before regaining his balance. Not happy. Very upset. Asker was very upset, and so was the other person. As the only heir to the pure-blooded Malfoy family, Draco is still very proud, but what happened on the Hogwarts Express has seriously dampened his self-esteem. Harry Potter, the boy who survived, was more famous than he thought. In the eyes of many people, this boy who defeated the mighty Dark Lord Voldemort as a baby must be a great man when he grows up. In that case, why didn't you maintain a good relationship with him in advance? It's also an investment, isn't it? Draco could swear that he definitely approached Harry with the idea of being Harry Potter's friend. He wanted to be Harry's friend. That's right. Not everyone is eligible to be Harry Potter's friend. This is wrong. Pure blood family, there are not many families who are qualified to use this word. Potter family counts as one, Malfoy family counts as one, Black family as well, and there are others. It is worth noting that even if he is as great as Dumbledore, his family is not qualified to be called a pure blood family. With that said, Harry and Draco are a perfect match. Always feels weird. So, Harry can be friends with Draco, but that red-haired Weasley, he is not qualified. The Weasley family, one of the pure blood families, the mother of Ron Weasley and his brothers and sisters, was formerly the daughter of the Pruitt family, which was also a pure-blood family with 2 births. Members of the Order of the Phoenix, and they all died honorably. In this way, Ron should be qualified to be Harry's friend. However, the Weasley family also has a bad name, pure-blood traitor. The grievances that have been entangled for thousands of years, what exactly happened, is no longer important. What matters is that in the eyes of the Malfoy family, the Weasley family is simply garbage and scum. How can such a family, such descendants, be qualified to be Harry Potter's friends? Harry Potter, you will regret it. Every child spoiled by his parents will always say this in his heart after being ignored and abandoned by others. There are no bad people in this world, only good people who have done bad things. Let's go back to the topic. Draco has 2 followers, Crabbe Vincent and Gore Gregory. From their surnames, it can be seen that they are not pure-blood families, but only a small family attached to the former. The one who hit Ask just now was Crabbe, a fat man with a big head, a thick neck, underdeveloped limbs, and a simple mind. Goyle, above. Asker moved his wrist and walked up to Crabbe with a smile. He didn't say hello, and slammed a straight punch on his nose. Good evening, welcome to Hogwarts. Good evening, welcome to Hogwarts. It's a way of saying hello. Clap. The fist meets the nose, squeezing out a cloud of blood, which is also a way of saying hello. Asker grinned. Behind him was the moon. The moonlight could not illuminate his face, but his white teeth shone with a cold light. His eyes glowed faintly with blue light, like 2 ghost fires floating in the air, flickering and disappearing. Honestly, it's kind of scary. Crabbe covered his nose, tears welling up in his eyes. This is not cowardice, it is instinct. Even an adult, when his nose is hit hard, can't help crying, and even faints. You dare to hit me? This kind of questioning fully expresses the panic and disbelief in the speaker's heart. To describe it in one word, it is serious. Oh, why didn't I dare to hit you? Rolling his eyes, Ask took out his handkerchief and slowly wiped the blood on his fist. After making sure to wipe it clean, he threw the handkerchief on the ground, frowned and said, I hate blood. Who are you? Draco Malfoy blocked the movements of the 2 servants with his gaze, looked at Asker suspiciously for a long time, and after confirming that he had never seen this person and that he had no family logo on his body, he let go of his last worries. Just a nobody. Draco thought to himself. This kind of thought was thrown into the trash after only a few seconds. Clap. Goyle covered his nose, bright red blood flowed out from between his fingers and dripped onto his clothes, and the red was swallowed up by the black. It's symmetrical. Draco could have sworn it was the worst word he'd ever heard in his life. At this time, Draco had thrown all his cultivation aside. Fuck his demeanor, manners, his forbearance. Call me. Draco shouted through gritted teeth, as if feeling that this was not enough, he added another sentence. Beat me to death. Kill me. This sentence came from a certain night novel, and Draco used it subconsciously, but he ignored that those who say this sentence are generally not good people, and there will be no good end. Crabbe and Goyle have been waiting for this sentence for a long time, and they can't wait to beat Asker violently, and they are angry. However, the one who moved faster than the 2 of them was Ask. Taking advantage of his small size, Asker easily fell into the student team and disappeared from Draco's sight in the blink of an eye. Bastard! Stop for me! There was a furious roar behind him. Ask shrugged his shoulders, and whispered, idiots are standing there for you to beat up. This distance is still a little dangerous. Asking looked at the dense team and it was too big for a while, but he could only continue to work hard to squeeze forward. If I'm not mistaken, the 3 of them should go to Slytherin, right? Will I be beaten into 2 biscuits by then? Ask suddenly found out that he got into a little trouble. Perhaps, he was too impulsive, but since he did, there was no need to regret it. Asker absolutely did not believe that he would be cornered by those 3 idiots. Those 3 idiots, if Asker said that he was serious, he would teach them how to behave in minutes. So, let's go to Gryffindor, it's such a happy decision. Asker is proud of his wit, what a wise decision. Ask, you are the best. What is there to say? Handsome for only 3 seconds. In many cases, even 3 seconds may not be enough. The path is rugged, and it is built on the mountain. There are no safety measures such as guardrails. Hogwarts has a record that no freshman has ever had a problem on this road. Today, this record will be broken by Asker. With one foot in the air, his body leaned forward in the wrong direction according to inertia, and the stone under his feet rolled forward. In just an instant, Asker broke the Hogwarts record. There was once a freshman standing on the side of the path, looking down, and then that person was so frightened that he had to be carried by others to complete the journey. If the height exceeds a certain value, it is meaningless, because there is only a dead end when falling from it. Wingardium Leviosa. Asker drew his wand with extraordinary agility, cast a levitating spell on himself, and then his body fell down at a faster speed than before. Damn! Asker looked at the wand in his hand and cursed bitterly. It was only then that he remembered that the wand in his hand, which was composed of the strange combination of ashwood and phoenix tail feathers, was probably the most stubborn wand and belonged to only one person. Wingardium Leviosa. Invalid. Wingardium Leviosa. Invalid. Wingardium Leviosa. Invalid. Damn it! I am your master. The wand trembled slightly, the miracle did not happen, he was still falling, and Asker seemed to hear the wand's mockery. What are you? You also want to be my master? Asker was stunned for a moment, then he threw his wand forcefully as if he had seen a ghost, disappeared into the darkness, and disappeared. Then, he was dumbfounded, he lost his wand, he actually lost his wand. However, perhaps thinking about how to survive is more important than losing the wand. Hey! In the darkness, a fire suddenly lit up and flew towards Asker from below. Asker felt his body light up, something grabbed his collar and dragged him towards Hogwarts Castle in the distance. Asker touched it with his hand, and it seemed to be the paw of a bird, and the bird didn't seem to be big, only the size of a turkey. There is no consciousness of the rescued person at all. Asker's eyes can't see the bird, so he can only scratch the bird with his hands, trying to pluck a few hairs off. Ask is not stupid. Yu reading www.yuyugonshu.com can drag his fast-flying bird, it is definitely not an ordinary bird. If the old man wasn't bragging, the bird's owner was the headmaster of Hogwarts, Albus Dumbledore. Dumbledore's bird, it must be Phoenix Fox. Phoenix is a treasure. Asker clearly remembered that there was a wizard who offered a reward of 3,000 galleons just for a hair on Fox's body. I got rich. Asker grabbed the phoenix tail feather that he finally pulled out. It was a thrill and excitement. Although the back of his hand was pecked by the angry fox, blood was dripping, but what is this small injury compared to 3,000 gold galleons? Fox apparently also realized that it was actually plucked by Asker, and screamed a few times angrily. It dragged Asker and rushed towards a steeple. When passing a balcony, his claws loosened and threw Asker. Went in. The expected collision did not happen. Dumbledore, who happened to be watching the scenery on the balcony, caught Asker and saved him from suffering. Good luck. Asker breathed a sigh of relief and slowly raised his head. Then his pupils suddenly expanded and then contracted violently. Finally, Lan Yuyu's eyeballs magically turned golden. The color of Kim Galleon. Dumbledore's beard. Merlin, I'm rich. The smile on Dumbledore's face slowly solidified, and he touched his chin, which suddenly lost a lot of beards. He thought it would be better for Asker to fall the ground before. When Asker, accompanied by the head of Gryffindor House, Professor Minerva McGonagall, returned to the freshman team, everyone had a strange expression. Her hair was messed up like a bird's nest, because Fox flew too fast, so she couldn't keep her hairstyle or anything, her cheeks were slightly swollen, and Hermione's slap was really hard, her hands were wrapped in gauze, and there were deep bones underneath. The wound, which is left by Fawkes, the clothes are messy, some places are still torn, you can see the inside. Without the consciousness of being the center of attention at all, Asker greeted Professor McGonagall as if he was nothing, and he walked slowly to the team of freshmen. Hagrid, who was in charge of guiding the new students, breathed a sigh of relief. He wanted to say something, but in the end he just made a cheer gesture to Harry and turned away. There was a little accident before, but it's resolved. Professor McGonagall glanced at Asker and raised her voice slightly so that the students in the back row could hear her. Welcome to Hogwarts. The opening banquet is about to start, but before you go to the dining hall, you must first determine which college you are going to. Sorting is a very important ceremony, because when you are in school, the college is like you are in the school. Home to Hogwarts. You're going to take classes with the rest of the house, live in the house dorms together, and spend your spare time in the house common room together. The names of the 4 houses are Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw, and Slytherin. Each house has its own glorious history, and each has produced outstanding witches and wizards. During your time at Hogwarts, your outstanding performance will earn your college points, and any infractions will cost your college points. At the end of the year, the college with the highest score will receive the College Cup, which is very high. The honor. I hope that no matter which college you are assigned to, you can win glory for the college. In a few minutes, the sorting ceremony will be held in front of all the teachers and students of the school. I suggest that while you wait, you should tidy up and be more alert. All the freshmen looked at Ask, and it seemed that there was no one worse than him here. What are you looking at? Haven't seen the handsome guy? Asker turned around and showed everyone his trendy and fashionable clothes. Ha ha ha, the freshman couldn't help laughing, and Asker laughed too, and then spit out a word. Boring. I'll pick you up when it's ready over there. Professor McGonagall said suddenly, please keep quiet while you wait. After speaking, Professor McGonagall left the room and should have gone to the auditorium to report to Dumbledore. The waiting time always seems to be extraordinarily long, especially for those who have no confidence in their hearts. There were a few people who, whether it was intentional or what, had been spreading some terrifying remarks there, such as the sorting ceremony was terrifying, painful, and would bleed. Sometimes, you can't ask an 11-year-old to do well, so those crying, tearful, and restless kids are actually the past of most of us. Asker, he is not an ordinary 11-year-old boy. Compared with his peers, he does have a sense of vicissitudes, as many people have said. It was not the first time for Ask to attend the opening ceremony. At this time last year, he was thousands of miles away. As a freshman, he was also waiting anxiously. That opening ceremony was not friendly, that school was not friendly, the people at that school, perhaps using the word unfriendly to describe it, were all praises. They seemed to be the enemies of Asker from birth. A lot of things happened later, and the final result was that Asker dropped out of school, then crossed the European continent, came to England, and came to Hogwarts. Whether this school welcomes him or not, and whether he can stay in this school depends on the sorting ceremony that follows. From this point of view, he should be nervous. Dumbledore's attitude is unclear. Asker knows that Dumbledore must recognize him, but Asker can't guess what Dumbledore thinks. Unfathomable. There are not many people who can make Asker feel this way, but all of them are tricky people who have made him suffer a lot. My head is a little swollen, it's time to stop thinking, just wait patiently. In other words, during the time of thinking, there were 3 more people beside Asker, 2 fat and 1 thin. Crabbe, Goyle, and Draco. Gentlemen want revenge, even if the past 10 years are not too late. Hee, we meet again. Draco said with a sneer. Crabbe and Goyle sandwiched Asker, 2 sturdy arms resting on his shoulders, holding him firmly and hard to break free. Well, why add another? Have we met? Asker asked back with some doubts. He frowned and pondered with some distress, as if he was seriously recalling something. This expression was very familiar to Draco. Neville behind him, that idiot, he always had a bad memory, and he also had this expression when he recalled certain things. Draco was a little angry and funny. How long did it take for this guy in front of him to forget what he did? You know, Crabbe and Goyle still have tissues stuck in their noses, like two wild boars. That's it, I understand. Ask suddenly realized that he nodded, then looked apologetically at Crabbe and Goyle's nose, and said in a very sincere and serious manner, so it is, it must be Ansa running again. Came out. I'm so sorry, I apologize to you on behalf of Unser. Answer? What is that? Draco's doubts were written on his face. He cleared his throat, and he made a very stern look, which was learned from his father, Lucius Malfoy. He said to Ask, don't try to shirk responsibility. You think this excuse? I'm sick. Asker said seriously, you reading www.yuyugonshu.com, then turned to look at Crabbe and Goyle, and added. And it's serious. Crabbe and Goyle stayed away from Asker almost immediately, like avoiding snakes and scorpions. It seemed that if they were in contact with him for a while, they would be infected. He glared fiercely at Crabbe and Goyle, and Draco said contemptuously, are you sick? I still have medicine. Your sickness. Oh he Asker's expression suddenly became weird, a grotesque smile appeared on the corner of his mouth, and he twitched morbidly a few times. He interrupted Draco's words. There is no cure for my disease. Before Draco could speak, he quickly took out a piece of paper from his pocket and threw it to Draco. Just a cursory glance, Draco's expression changed drastically. He threw the piece of paper to Asker in a panic, and then took Crabbe and Goyle to hide behind the team. Tisk tisk, sure enough, this piece of paper is still useful. Fortunately, it wasn't lost. Asker folded the piece of paper again and slowly put it into his pocket, still with that weird smile on the corner of his mouth. And Hermione, who came to Ask's side at an unknown time, only saw a few words on the piece of paper in a hurry. Ask, split, forget, mistake, forgive. Acquitted. Today is the Mid-Autumn Festival, I have to say, happy holidays everyone. Today's melon seeds 5 watch, full of sincerity, I can't eat your moon cakes, but how about ordering a recommendation ticket? Quizzy is hard at work in the company, and by the way, the code word. Are you finished? Asker said without looking back, while Hermione was startled and almost cried out. However, since it was discovered, there is no need to hide it. I didn't finish it. Hermione honestly confessed, but even if she didn't see it all, the last sentence alone was worth thinking about. Acquitted? Glancing at Asker, Hermione suddenly felt that this guy didn't seem to be a good person either. However, just now, those 3 guys who knew that they were not good people just now, why did they suddenly hide so far? Are you curious why the 3 suddenly gave up and hid away? Ask suddenly turned around, looked at Hermione with a smile, and said the question in her heart. Who said I was curious? At this time, how could it be possible to admit it? It must be refuted. Oh, then it's like I didn't say anything. Ask shrugged his shoulders regretfully, and turned around again. The old was staring at the ground, as if there were Garen there. Of course, as we all know, there is no galleon there. Hermione stamped her feet angrily, turned her head away, and stared at the other wall. Suddenly, 20 or so ghosts jumped out of the wall, making Hermione take a few steps back in fright and just bumped into Asker. I knew you must be curious and ask me. Asker turned around with a confident smile, and then bumped into a terrifying face. The smile on his face gradually solidified. The empty eyes, dull and dull, are more like 2 glass balls. The skinny face seems to have been cut by a knife, and it is nothing more than skinny. There is no color on his body, like a strange combination of sketches and black and white films, where fantasy and reality coexist. Asker had a stiff expression and lowered his head slightly. He noticed that the ghost in front of him was covered in blood, and it was a rare silver-white color. In my memory, it seems that only the blood of unicorns is silver. Ahem, that. Ask, who has always been eloquent, didn't know what to say for a while. After struggling for a long time, he finally managed to squeeze out a sentence, which was considered a greeting. Nice to meet you, Mr. Ghost. The ghost standing in front of Ask has a long history, at least 900 years of history. Before his death, this ghost almost became Rowena Ravenclaw's son-in-law, but unfortunately, it was only a little short. Bloody Barrow. There have been many people who have seen the Blood Man Barrow, but facing this terrifying ghost, there are not many people who can say nice to meet you, even only one person in the past 100 years. He said, nice to meet you, but in his heart, Asker kept reciting various spells, from removing your weapon to Avada's life. The imaginary enemy was the barrow in front of him. Nice to see you again, welcome back to Hogwarts. The Bloodman Barrow opened his mouth, and only he and Ask could hear the deep words. What's going on? Asker's entire body was stiff, as if he had been hit by a petrification spell, unable to move. Except for Ask, the other ghosts that came out together seemed to be petrified, looking at the barrow and Ask with an incredible look. What did they see? Bloody Barrow actually speaks to a freshman? Wait a minute, that freshman, it seems. I remember. A chubby little monk-like ghost stammered. He seemed to have thought of something, with a memory expression on his face. Not only him, but the other ghosts as well. The Bloodman Barrow suddenly turned around and stared at the ghosts coldly, his eyes without the slightest emotion, made these ghosts who were already dead feel fear, shut up one after another, and left here as if they were running away. You don't need to speak, you can instantly kill these War 5 scum ghosts with just one look. This is the barrow. After all the ghosts left, the barrow also walked towards a wall, and finally passed through the wall. Although he never looked back at Asker, Asker felt that the barrow seemed to be staring at him all the time. What's going on? Asker tapped his head with his hand. He really felt that his brain was not enough. In less than an hour, there seemed to be a bunch of puzzles waiting for him to solve. However, this is interesting. If it is a quiet life like stagnant water, it is better to go back to the hometown and stay there. That is, not long after the ghosts left, Professor McGonagall came back and confirmed that the freshmen were still waiting honestly. She nodded, as if very satisfied with the performance of the freshmen. However, when she saw Asker's tattered clothes, Professor McGonagall's smile disappeared before it appeared. Professor McGonagall stared at Ask without saying anything, hoping that Ask would realize what he was doing was wrong. In the past few decades, Professor McGonagall has encountered countless mischievous students, but no one has been able to remain calm under her gaze. However, perhaps today, this record will be broken by Asker. Ask is very calm, isn't it just being stared at, isn't it just a stern look in his eyes, isn't it just a scary expression, just been stared at for 10.5 years, and there will be no less flesh on his body, what's there to be afraid of? Asker can be so calm, but you reading www.yuyuganshu.com does not mean that others are so calm. Even though Professor McGonagall was not targeting other freshmen, they were still trembling and shivering, as if the temperature here had suddenly dropped below freezing. Clean up. Professor McGonagall simply threw a spell at Asker. It was a very common spell, and Asker could do it too, but Professor McGonagall's spell gave him a different feeling. If Asker used it himself, of course he was reluctant to kill himself, so the process of cleaning up was very comfortable. However, Professor McGonagall would show mercy to such a thorny student? As far as Asker felt, if his hair did not grow naturally and was strong enough, he might have become bald directly. Magic is indeed a very magical thing, just a spell. Asker is much cleaner. It's just that the spell of cleaning up can't repair Asker's tattered clothes, so it's still a little short. However, it's a little bit worse. Professor McGonagall still has a way. She is a professor of transfiguration at Hogwarts, and she is also a very powerful animagus. Soon, the clothes on Asker's body also became like new. The reason for using change is that after a period of time, after the effect of the spell ends, the clothes will return to their original appearance. Just like Cinderella, after that point, she is still a bullied maid. After cleaning up Asker, Professor McGonagall took a few steps forward, stood in front of Asker, looked at him condescendingly, and said such a sentence. You should be glad that you are not a student of Gryffindor.